Jizzledy Freak, coming at you from day 43 of the government shutdown. It's not looking too bad out here. 31 days in October, 11 days of November, so today would make it day 43. The politicians have been getting paid, but refusing to do their goddamn jobs. What a fucking gig that is. You could just fucking say, I don't want to do my job today. We're gonna keep it shut down. I don't give a fuck. Somebody's starving. That's alright, I got plenty of food. They should work harder. Yeah, they should have been prepared. Like all the government employees who for 43 days now have been working without pay. You know how pissed I would be if I was working for 43 whole days, like, oh, when are we gonna get our paycheck? If you guys could just keep coming into work and doing your job free of charge. I know it's been kind of hard on your bills lately, but we just gotta give them some time. Be patient. I know they're working as hard as they can to get that government open for us. No, they're not. I know it could be real frustrating. Oh yeah, it's super frustrating. You work for 60 fucking hours in a week and you can't even afford to rent an apartment. Best you could ever hope for is to have a room in an apartment, and that's what they consider affordable housing. Farmers take all of this time and effort to grow food, and so much of that food doesn't even make it to the grocery store, and the food that doesn't get sold in the grocery store gets thrown into garbage bins and sent to landfills, and they call it supply and fucking demand. A lot of people can't even go to the doctor, they can't even go to the dentist, they can't even go to the optometrist. It's so goddamn expensive the way they, how they fuck our healthcare. Yeah, I know you need that insulin shot to live, but insulin's gonna cost a whole lot more, motherfucker. How bad do you really want to live? I know you're already putting in a 60-hour work week, but I promise if you put in another 40 hours, you might be able to just barely afford that insulin shot that you need to live. It's more profitable for you guys to die, so if you guys could just do that quietly. Yeah, Palestine, you guys are dying a little bit too loudly. You're making the rest of the world uncomfortable. If you could just die a little more quietly. Yeah, we'd like to build a Riviera over your dead body. And what's most fucked up of all, I have to repeat my narratives because if you repeat it often enough, it becomes the truth. And mine's already the truth, so I'm just trying to stick it into your head a little bit deeper so you start repeating these narratives. Many of America's most wealthiest people have more money than they can spend in their entire lifetimes, and they're still making more, and they're still making more than that. And maybe we should start to examine some of these structures that are built on profiting by denying somebody shelter, food, water, health care, the right to live, the right to breathe, the right to safety, the right to space. Because so often we see that people have their own regions destabilized for what reason, one or another. They're displaced from those regions, and they try to find other places that they've heard are safe, the other places that they've heard are free. That's why they flee to places like Europe and Canada, America, trying to get refugee status, trying to get asylum so that they can get away from the danger in their own country. And here we are in America, we're like, oh no, America's only for the whites, you gotta go back home, mister. And this is a story of American history through and through. So many people had their own regions destabilized, their own lives thrown into a tailspin. Indigenous people were living peacefully until the settlers came. Africans were probably living peacefully until they were sold off into slavery. And it's always the same reasons that people come for the land, they come for the resources, they come to leave their own mark, their own stain on history. A lot of people, they say Donald Trump, worst president ever. And I like to think that they are all pretty bad people if you really think about the legacy that they left behind. Sometimes we don't find out about shit until way after the fact. There's information that's classified and it won't be declassified for another 10 years, another 20 years, another 30 years. Declassifying documents like the Epstein files is at the discretion of whomever, like Kash Patel or even the president, even Speaker of the House Mike Johnson. And ain't that the way that America works anymore? They just try to keep us so goddamn distracted. So many people are just stuck in this vicious routine of going to sleep, waking up to go to work, just to pay the bills, just to go back to sleep, to wake up, to go to work, to pay the bills. There's a lot of people in America that may not even know what's happening right now other than what they're being told. And I hate how Americans rely so much on the mainstream media. They seem to believe that, well, if the mainstream media is not talking about it, then it must not be happening, huh? The problem with the mainstream media is how they distort everything, how they twist everything, how they make it seem like they're giving you reliable information that they looked up and they researched. A journalist's job is to write a compelling story. You're watching the news, but they're reading it from a script. What they're gonna say, how they're gonna say it, it's already been pre-planned out. All these events that say are live are actually live with a delay, so that they can prevent you from having any information that they might not want you to have. Literally editing the live feed and censoring the live feed before that live feed hits anybody's eyes. Is it a live feed if that feed is delayed by 5 seconds or 10 seconds even? Blur this out, clip that out. We've seen the CGI in video games, and y'all don't think that they got that shit down to a fine science? That there's some type of dope ass CGI that only corporations like NFL can pay for? Even the people who sit at the stadiums, guess what? From the live feed, we often see a bunch of cheering and, roaring from the crowd, but they're just pumping that noise in. They edit that noise in over the fucking feed. They blare extra crowd noise in through the fucking radios of the stadium so it makes it sound more lively, manipulating us to think that it's a real good game, influencing people who are watching the live feed. Man, I should have gone to that. Do you hear that crowd? What isn't faked for fucking views these days? What isn't fake to give you an impression that something was better than it actually was? It's like I've seen so many of these advertisements for the Arby's steak bites and everyone's like, oh my God, they're so amazing. Just because you try something and you act like it's really tasty and really exciting doesn't mean that other people are going to be fooled. I'm going to have to go down to Arby's and see what those steak bites are all about. And chances are the price that you would be paying for Arby's steak bites, you could just go buy yourself a fucking good steak. Cook it up yourself. I'm sure you could get a steak somewhere at the store for $6. Maybe it ain't a thick steak, but it's going to be more substantially nutritious than an Arby's steak bite steak. God knows where that meat's come from. They throw these specials out at you, but God knows where that meat came from. It could have been sitting in a fucking freezer for the past 10 years, and you're like, yeah, it was all we could afford. Let's try something with it. Let's call them steak bites. And yeah, I just think it's sad. They just have this rotating line of products that they release, and it doesn't matter what it is. All these influencers, they go out, they buy it, they try it, they promote it. And nobody knows what they're really putting in your food. All you really know is that it's artificial colors, artificial dyes, artificial sweeteners, artificial fats, artificial salts. Chemicals destabilize your food while it sits on the shelf. That's why a Twinkie never seems to go bad. I'm jealous of all these countries. They just have fresh fruits and vegetables and seafood and all that from the earth. America's got a goddamn science project for their fucking cuisine.